Hey guys, this is Dave with CostCertified, and in this video, we're going to take a look at how you save and update assemblies and items. This is an extremely important concept for you to understand. I would say, there's probably a few concepts that without learning it, you can't really use CostCertified properly, and this is one of them. So it's very, very, very important to understand how to save and update assemblies and items. So we're taking a look at a quote here, and this kitchen assembly, the way that you know it's been saved in the database is that if you scroll over, it says this assembly is saved as a searchable assembly already. That means that anytime you're doing a kitchen, you can always go into your database here and you can actually search for it right here. Now if I wanted to name this kitchen renovation, for instance, and we're probably missing a few things here. If I wanted to name it a kitchen renovation, we probably add a painting assembly in here, a few things to make it a little bit more. There's probably a couple items missing, but in this particular video, I'm just going to show you, if I name this kitchen reno, and then I want to update this. Actually, what I'm going to do, so here's the difference, and this is important in the video. I want to save this as a totally new assembly because this assembly was used in a home build as a kitchen. So I don't want to, if I'm building now a new assembly that has to do with a renovation, meaning that I have extra items like maybe demolition, painting, whatever it is, then I want to save it as a new searchable assembly because I don't want to mix up my kitchen reno or remodel assembly with my kitchen assembly that I use in a new home build. So anytime you want a new assembly because you're doing something and you want two different ones, you would save it as a new searchable assembly. If you're just simply editing the same assembly, you're just adding and editing it, and you just want it updated, you'd click update. So let's save this as a new searchable assembly. And now that I'm saving this as a new searchable assembly, I'm going to have an assembly called Kitchen Reno in my database that I can look for all the future quotes that I do. And I can start adding items and other assemblies that have to do with the kitchen reno. But I still have my original kitchen assembly that I use in my home build. So that's the difference, and you have to save. Now, the other thing to understand is that if I start working on this, so let's say that I add an item here. We're going to actually do this here where we add, let's just search for paint. Okay, here we go. And by the way, this little icon means that it's an assembly. So I'm going to just click on this and I'm going to add paint interior as an assembly. So now I've added this to my kitchen reno because I know that we're going to have to be painting. And I'm going to just close this. We're not going to go into it. Oh, obviously don't pay attention to that price. That's completely wrong. 182,000 square feet. That is not right, obviously. We can easily change that. So let's just change that to, I don't know, we'll just pick a number here. So it should update the price here. Yeah. So now I've added this assembly, right? I've done work to this kitchen reno assembly. And I want to make sure that anytime I use the kitchen reno assembly, that all of these items and assemblies are included. So if I go do a new quote, I want to be able to plop it in and have all of these saved. Well, if I just go, now, this current quote that I'm working on will always be saved. Okay, so you don't need to worry about that. But if I want the kitchen reno assembly saved for a future quote and I've made changes, I need to click on update searchable assembly. I have to update it. I don't save it as new because I haven't, this isn't a new assembly. I just simply updated it. So I'm going to click on update searchable assembly. And when I click on update searchable assembly, it's now going to save this entire assembly with all the changes that I made for future quotes. Okay, so I'm actually going to refresh my screen to show you what I mean here. So I'm going to refresh. Just give it a second here. And every once in a while, the only reason I'm refreshing right now is that I'm doing this as a demo. There are times when you're working on CostCertified that if you do make changes and you don't notice maybe the change taking effect or whatever, then it is advisable with all web applications that sometimes you just do a quick refresh and then you can reset it. But in this case, I want to show you that if I remove this kitchen reno now, right? Let's pretend that we start without that. So I remove it. And now I want to add that new assembly that we just, and the reason I refresh is just to make sure that it shows up here because we did save it as a new assembly. Oops. There we go. Kitchen reno. Oh, here it is. And that's the assembly icon. So that's the one we had just saved as a new assembly. And now when I go to it and I look into it here, you're going to see what I mean. You're going to see that the paint interior assembly is now saved as part of this new assembly. Now, had I not updated the kitchen reno, had I not updated it, the paint interior wouldn't have come with it when you added it as a new into a new quote. So very, very important. Now, same thing here. If I go into an item, an individual item, this item's already part of my database. If I go into this item and make changes, any changes that you want saved for future quotes, if you're only making changes for this quote, you don't update it. Like if you want to call this kitchen reno, main kitchen, whatever you want to call it, just for this quote, just to make sense, just so the customer sees it. Like maybe you throw in a 2-piece bathroom, but you call it the main floor bathroom. That's totally fine. You can rename it for the quote. You just don't want to update it to save it in the database as that, right? Do you get the difference? Because your database is all for future quotes and for you to reference those assemblies so you know what's in them, but you can rename them for the actual quote and it doesn't change unless you override it and save it and update it for the future. So important to understand. The quote saves its own version, so you can mess with it and play with it, but the assemblies that are saved in your database, if you're making changes and you want it saved for all future, that's when you have to update. Now, if I go into an item and I do any kind of changes, so I open this up, right, and I make a change to the description, I maybe change some pictures, I do any kind of changes here, you always want to click either up here on the 3 buttons and click update because we didn't actually change the item. So I click update, or when you're out of here, and don't worry if you click out, that's another thing. Don't worry that even if you've made changes and you clicked out, it'll automatically save it for this quote. So you're not going to lose anything even if you click out. But what you need to do is you need to go here after you've made your changes, if you haven't saved, and update searchable item. Because now every time this item is loaded in this assembly or any other assembly, because you can reuse items in other assemblies, that's the beauty of CostCertified. But anytime this is loaded, it's going to have the changes that you've done. And I'm really hounding on this because I know at first you have to wrap your brain around this, but it's extremely important. And once you learn to save properly, then the magic of CostCertified is really evident. So the other thing is you can see that one of my items here doesn't have a save icon, right? So I've actually added an item here. And if I wanted to save this for future quotes, because you're going to add items on the go, and every once in a while you might want to save it for future quotes, I would click Save as New Searchable Item, and it's going to add a little icon indicating that it has now been saved in my database. Okay, so anytime you're making changes to an individual item and you want that saved for future quotes, always update it. Same thing with an assembly. If you want to build a totally new assembly, like a kitchen reno, then save it as a new assembly, and then that's going to save in your database. Hopefully you found this video useful. In one of the next videos, we'll take a look at how assemblies can be tied to dimensions and how that works. Thanks for watching the video.